So thank you all for being with us tonight and for joining NEARS on this special 45th anniversary event that we are calling Power to the People, How Grassroots Power Overcomes Big Nuclear. My name is Tim Judson. I'm the Executive Director at NEARS, and we'll be introducing the rest of our presenters who are NEARS staff members a little bit later. Also sad that our longtime board president, Chris Williams, will not be able to join us as we'd hoped. He had a medical issue unexpectedly, but he's going to be okay. But before beginning with the rest of our program, we want to begin in a spirit of gratitude for the air, water, and land that sustains us wherever we happen to live in these lands that many of our Indigenous siblings call Turtle Island. And especially, we want to acknowledge the rights that Indigenous peoples have to these lands, which have been unjustly and cruelly usurped. The dispossession and abuses experienced by Turtle Island's original occupants enabled the exploitation and abuses of land, air, and waters that have come back to harm all of us for generations. In order to truly and lastingly repair relations with ourselves and Mother Earth, we must also work to set relations right with the original peoples of Turtle Island and to honor their ancient relationship and ongoing stewardship of her lands, air, water, and living creatures. It is only right to start with that acknowledgement, but repairing our relations must extend into all of what we do. Tonight, part of that is also to let you know of a simultaneous event being held by the Hall No campaign, an Indigenous collective opposing uranium mining on land sacred to several nations near the Grand Canyon. The mining of uranium is incredibly polluting and toxic and has wrought multi-generational harm on communities wherever it is done. And it is Indigenous peoples who have consistently borne the greatest burdens from its effects. At this moment, the Hall No campaign needs our support in the way of donations to fund organizing and actions by Indigenous communities affected by the Pinyon Plain mine and others near the Grand Canyon that may resume soon. So to give your support to the campaign, please go to the link that we're going to put in the chat and give what you can, as well as to help support NEARS, as we're going to do later on in this event as well. So to get into that, we are also so very excited to see you and to kick off this special event. This is an exciting moment for NEARS for a number of reasons. It's a chance to kick off the new year with our community of activists, friends, and supporters, and to update you on major developments this year and to talk about our plans for 2024. That includes beginning a new phase of NEARS's mission and work, which you're going to hear about later. And we want to give you a preview of the exciting efforts we're launching. To no small effect, we are also celebrating our 45th anniversary year, which has been a great time to take stock of all we have done, and most importantly, to look forward toward making good on our mission for a nuclear-free, carbon-free world. And with that, this is also a fundraising event. We have a big goal for our 45th anniversary, which we have to meet by the end of the year in order to unlock a $30,000 matching grant from another one of our supporters. So to help do that, we're hoping to raise a key portion of those funds tonight with a goal to reach $5,000 before we say goodnight. To help us do that, please go to our donation link in the chat box now or at any time during the event, and we will be checking on our progress occasionally as we go. We're also hoping that this event and the stories that we will share tonight inspire you many times this evening. And if you feel so moved, please let us know by going ahead and making another donation to NEARS or to the Hall No campaign. And we'll go ahead and put those links in the chat right now. Great. So kicking off with our event, I want to introduce our presenters for tonight. As I mentioned before, I'm Tim Judson. I've been the executive director at NEARS for about 10 years, and also I usually am on the unceded lands of the Onondaga Nation, also called Syracuse, 30 miles from 3 reactors on the shore of Lake Ontario. But tonight I'm actually in the NEARS office here on the Nacotchtank and Piscataway land. In what's known as Tacoma Park, Maryland. And I'll also introduce our Radioactive Waste Project Director, Diane DeRigo. So Dee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Diane DeRigo, Nuclear Information and Resource Service. I've been at NEARS for many of the 45 years that NEARS has been around. This is our anniversary celebration for 45 years. And I'll, I work on the radioactive waste issue, high level, low level, no level, and trying to stop making more.
And then next we have our digital campaign specialist, Dan McCann.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anne. I am, as Tim said, the digital campaign specialist here. So anytime you get an email or see us out in the wild on social, that's me. And so I love connecting with you guys, love getting feedback, love getting your comments in the captions in the comment section. So yeah, say hi. Oh, and I am on the other side of the country on unceded Wintu-Nyana land in far northern California.
Great, and then we'll hand it to Denise Jacobsberg, our administrative coordinator.
That is me, guys. I am the office manager here, and I deal with our books and background information. Calls. I might have spoken with many of you. People have given us donations. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I am here with Dee in Maryland on Piscataway land. And I also think we need to fix our chat box.
Yeah, and I'll get into that in a second. So, everyone, so tonight, we're doing this as a webinar event. So we're, the chat has been disabled, because we don't want to have sometimes we get interlopers in these events, and it fills up the chat with with a lot of extraneous material. And we want to keep the conversation moving forward and productive. We are going to have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of, towards, the midway of the event. And so if you have questions that you want to pose, things you want to contribute, please put that in the Q&A box, and we will make sure to get to that, as soon as we have time. So, with that, that's just kind of the way that we're running the event tonight. But we're really grateful for you to be here. And to kind of kick off the presentation, we wanted to, for our 45th anniversary, have an event, have a forum to talk about the power of grassroots organizing, because that's really what NEARS was founded for, was to help build and strengthen and support the grassroots movement for a nuclear-free future, for the transition to 100% renewable energy, and to stop making radioactive waste. And this goes back to 1978, when really the anti-nuclear movement, the anti-nuclear energy movement, was truly becoming a force to be reckoned with. There were grassroots groups springing up all over the country, fighting the hundreds of nuclear power plants that utilities were proposing, and really having to take on this incredibly intimidating and technocratic industry that that really just tried to intimidate people, with its claims to high science and expertise, and for ordinary people to be able to take on protecting their communities and their environment from the hazards of this industry that seemed to be trying to take over everything. There have been mass demonstrations at several proposed nuclear plants around the country, from the Seabrook reactors in New Hampshire to the Diablo Canyon reactors in Southern California. But there was so much of this activism happening all over the country that the people felt a need to have essentially some sort of a networking hub for grassroots groups to plug into, to be able to help people get access to reliable, accurate, credible information out, before the internet had been created, and to be able to build a national movement together from the grassroots. And that was really why NEARS was founded in 1978. And this was, we opened our doors in September of '78, and 6 months later, we found ourselves in the middle of the first, major commercial nuclear disaster at 3 Mile Island, and that really surged, causing a surge in the movement around the country. And so within 6 months of NEARS's founding, NEARS was centrally involved in organizing what became the May 6th No Nukes March on Washington, where over 100,000 people showed up at the Capitol, with the largest demonstration in DC since the 1963 Civil Rights Movement's March on Washington for Jobs and Equality. But that was really only the beginning, and the work took off from there. As NEARS began working with grassroots campaigns all over the country, including supporting campaigns for referenda to close nuclear reactors in places like Sacramento and Portland, Oregon, and even Long Island in New York. We started to create resources that have become real institutions, such as founding the Nuclear Monitor, which continues to be published to this day. And it was at that time that we actually hired a much younger Michael Marriott, who was my predecessor as executive director at NEARS for over 27 years. What you'll hear more from Diane DeRigo about in a little while is the vast number of campaigns that we worked on to stop radioactive waste dumps. But we were also training grassroots activists to watchdog their local nuclear power plants, and to hold the industry and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission accountable. Training people how to petition the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for enforcement of safety standards, and how to intervene against nuclear power plant license applications. We also in the 1990s ended up organizing one of the biggest anti-nuclear campaigns in the country's history with the Stop Mobile Chernobyl campaign. And that ended in defeating the first proposal for what would essentially been a consolidated interim storage site, by defending President Clinton's veto of legislation that would have set up quote unquote temporary nuclear waste storage at the Yucca Mountain site in Nevada. Then following on that, we organized 6 nuclear-free action camps with grassroots groups in New England and the Midwest, which organized and trained a new generation of activists to help carry forward the fight. We also in the 1990s helped environmental groups, in the former Soviet states get organized and fight the nuclear industry as their countries were establishing new governments and new democracies where environmental protest, was becoming more possible. We also worked with grassroots groups to help shut down 7 reactors in the 1990s in the Northeast and the Midwest. And we helped found in the year 2000 the Don't Nuke the Climate Coalition, which mobilized thousands of people to oppose nuclear power as a climate solution as far back as COP6 in Copenhagen. And we organized and trained grassroots groups to intervene against all 30 reactors that were proposed in the so-called nuclear renaissance back between 2008 and 2010. And that work is carried on to this day. I'm actually a product of that grassroots organizing and grassroots support that NEARS provided. When I was first getting involved as an activist in Syracuse back in the late 90s, NEARS helped us file our first petition for safety enforcement at the 9 Mile Point nuclear plant. And to be able to decipher and understand the highly technical reports that were really determining whether our community was going to be safe or not. So with that, I think if, this is really the work that needs to continue going on today as we're moving into a new generation of activism. And this is, and now that we've been around for 45 years, it's also clear that we need to be training and organizing in a new activist environment, in a new climate environment, and to be able to do that. And so this is really, what we also need your support for tonight, is to help us build those new training programs, those new campaigns, those new activist programs. And so we ask that you support that work and help us go into 2024 really strong and able to launch these campaigns. So if you would, please consider clicking on the donation link in the chat and making a contribution tonight. And if you'd like to do it now, that'd be terrific. We're going to check in a few minutes to see how we're doing.
Tim, Denise, and I are currently trying to figure out how to enable the chat. Helpful resources are not super helpful at the moment.
Yeah, and so we will begin. So anyway, so the next phase of this work is started actually in the last couple of weeks. There's been some really serious developments happening this year, and but I think to kind of set the context, through all of the work that NEARS has done over the last 45 years, nuclear power has proved again and again to be a failure, and but it is not going away easily. The nuclear industry in the US and elsewhere around the world finds itself stuck in a crucible between aging, dangerous nuclear reactors, growing stockpiles of nuclear waste, and yet also no way to build new reactors because they're too expensive and too difficult and too complicated to do. And so it is desperately trying everything it can to save itself. And that means that it's doing everything it can to destroy the possibility for renewable energy and to keep the dirty energy status quo going. So there's some old tricks that the industry is using right now, including things that we've been fighting for the last several years, such as this national nuclear bailout, which was enacted last year, which stands to funnel tens of billions of dollars into the utility company profits to keep old reactors running for potentially the next 10 to 15 years at least. They're also trying to relicense those reactors to keep them running for up to 80 years, which has never been done before and was never even conceived of when these plants were first built. They're also trying to roll back the closures of reactors that have been hard fought for years by grassroots activists, including upending the plan to close the last nuclear reactors in California, Diablo Canyon, that have been planned since 2016. There's a plan now to bail out those reactors and to keep them going potentially until the 2040s, sitting on earthquake fault lines. And there's also a plan now to restart the Palisades reactor in Michigan, which closed last year. And to bail it out and to keep it going. And they're also pushing to cut back safety standards and shutting the public out of the process, which again is an old trick the industry's been trying to do for a long time. But now the industry has some new tricks as well, and that includes targeting coal communities for nuclear power plants. Now there's a new initiative launched by the Department of Energy called Coal to Nuclear Transitions, in which we now see that there's potentially a dozen or more coal plant communities and coal mining communities that are being targeted for this new source of pollution that they've never had to deal with before. We're also seeing nuclear power get in bed with the tech industry, and to start getting into ways that for nuclear power plants to power huge data centers that are massive energy consumers, as a way for nuclear energy to greenwash the environmental impact of the tech industry. But also for nuclear energy to get access to a lot more money through selling electricity and helping these data companies greenwash their operations, as well as crypto mines. And then what we're also seeing is that nuclear power is marrying itself to the future of the natural gas industry as well, through the promotion of hydrogen as a quote clean energy source. So what we've seen happening now is that nuclear power plants are planning to set up hydrogen production facilities at their nuclear plants to begin producing hydrogen on a mass scale, which they're then encouraging the gas industry to mix into power plants and to be able to continue burning natural gas and hydrogen in order to keep both industries alive. This is no way to solve a climate crisis. This is only going to hold back renewable energy when we need to be making the transition to a carbon-free, fossil-free energy system and a nuclear-free energy system, and transitioning to 100% renewable energy. And this really came to a head in the last 2 weeks at the Global Climate Conference that the United Nations hosted in the United Arab Emirates. And what we saw happen from the get-go of that meeting was the nuclear industry pushing for a massive expansion of nuclear. And the US and the nuclear industry announced a multinational campaign to triple nuclear energy by 2050. This is completely insane, completely impossible, and the only way that they're going to be able to do this is by derailing the renewable energy future that is right on our fingertips. and that we need to be able to solve the climate crisis and to avert the growing crisis of nuclear waste that's threatening all of our water and land and air. So with that, this is really the context for for what the work of NEARS and the safe energy movement has before us for the coming decade and 2 decades, is to be able to beat back these attempts to keep the nuclear industry alive and accelerate the transition to renewable energy. So with that, this is again, why we really need your support tonight. And I want to ask Anne to share the donation thermometer to see where we are right now.
Absolutely. And it looks like we did get the chat working. So our links are there. Let me pull up this thermometer here. There we are. All righty.
Okay, well, it looks like we're already up to $590. That's really terrific. So we're making some progress. Excellent. Yeah, and so if you can, if you haven't had a chance to donate yet, if you'd like to do that now, that would really give us a boost. And I'll hand it over to Diane DeRigo to talk about the tremendous work that NEARS has done on radioactive waste.
You are on mute, Diane.
Yep, I will start all over. A common error. We should all know better. I'm Diane DeRigo, Radioactive Waste Project Director at Nuclear Information and Resource Service, or NEARS. Our mission is to serve as the information and networking hub for people and organizations concerned about nuclear power, radioactive waste, radiation, sustainable energy issues, and we've been doing that since 1978. The priority is to assist has always been to assist local and regional nuclear opponents in their fights against nuclear power and weapons. And part of our job is to help allied organizations who may not have nuclear expertise to maintain and be strong in their existing positions against nuclear power. We are going to be launching a resource for that, which Anne will tell us about in a few minutes when she talks, but a way that we're going to be able to continue to do this work in updated ways in this digital internet-driven hopefully post-COVID-19 world. So I've been here at NEARS for many of its 45 years and came from grassroots anti-nuclear organizing and industrial, academic, and analytical chemistry labs in Western New York. I learned about nuclear waste from the West Valley High-Level Radioactive Reprocessing Facility and the burial grounds that are upstream and upwind of Buffalo. And that region, Western New York, Niagara Falls, also has more Manhattan Project radioactive and chemical dumps than anywhere else in the country. So it's a great place to learn about the hazards of the nuclear power and weapons industries. But not to brag, there are many other places in this country and around the world that have been contaminated and devastated by nuclear and chemical waste. And uniting us together is the important piece of the larger strategy to win. I mean, what we're talking about here today is winning against big nuclear, which seems to be getting exponentially more difficult all the time. We were shocked when it looked like Illinois was going to maintain its ban against new nuclear, and in fact, it did get weakened a bit. So we do have uphill battles, very steep, getting steeper, but we need to keep fighting because we can win. And some of the past fights, I think, are instructive for the current and future fights that we're going to have. Many of you on this call actually worked on the fights against so-called low-level radioactive waste dumps. to get ready for tonight, I walked around our office and looked at the 45 years of files. So I didn't look at all the computer disks, but all of the files that have accumulated over the decades of battles that have been launched against not just nuclear power, but all the parts of the fuel chain. And we really haven't done a lot on uranium, but Tim mentioned it earlier. And I think in the years to come, we're going to need to link more with uranium activists to fight that. There's a bill on the precipice of passing Congress to encourage and increase uranium mining and milling and in situ leachate mining, which is sticking the chemicals into the aquifer to extract uranium, and HALEU, high assay low enriched uranium, which is on the verge of bomb grade uranium. So these parts of the nuclear power fuel chain need to be stopped, as well as the reactors themselves and the dumps for the waste that's generated along the way. The fights that we've had, the victories we have had, really do make a difference. I was at my nephew's graduation from college at Colgate in Central New York recently, and was playing in a creek and jumping and playing in the water. And I realized later that this was one of the creeks that would have definitely been radioactive if we hadn't stopped all 10 proposed nuclear dumps in New York State, or at least the ones that were by Chenango and Binghamton and Colgate, Cortland. And so we launched Don't Waste New York fights, worked with them, and there was Don't Waste Michigan. All these other states were fighting nuclear dumps around the country. There was a Don't Waste US that we connected with for fighting the so-called low-level dumps. And I just say real quick, most of you know, low level is not low risk. Low level is everything but the irradiated fuel and the reprocessing liquid. So it's got every radioactive element, every man-made element. It lasts into the literally millions of years, some of it. And yet the dumps that were being targeted and proposed in the 80s and 90s are still, the regulations only require 100 years of institutional control. So by stopping most of these dumps, we really protected a lot of the country. And there were lessons that were learned both by our side in organizing and by the industry in trying to get away with dumps. For example, New York targeted 10 locations. The whole state became anti-nuclear and educated on low-level waste equals nuclear power. And so when Connecticut went to pick their sites, they put them close to each other so that all of the districts wouldn't have people activated against. So there were these kinds of lessons that that the industry learned, making it harder for us, but we also learned that by uniting together, and we had at least 3 or 4 completely unfunded national conferences in Ann Arbor, in Omaha, several places around the country, where low-level waste, so-called low-level waste activists from around the country, California, Texas, Maine, Ohio, came together to strategize and organize, do press conferences, and unite together to try to prevent any of our sites. One of the things that people learned, that I observed in this decade or more of fighting these unlined soil ditches for nuclear power waste, was that it took people maybe 6 months to realize there was only 1 or 2 locations that were targeted with nuclear dumps that didn't come around to, well, all of them came around to, you have to stop making it, that there's no place for it, we shouldn't make it, and there are alternatives to get our electricity. That was across the board what groups came to. But the vast majority, within 6 months, decided that their community wasn't the only one targeted, and by sticking it to another community, it wasn't going to help. That what we really needed to do was go after the whole fight, the whole national law that was pushing for these dumps, the whole industry that was pushing for these dumps. Another thing that we did was to ally with the Physicians for Social Responsibility and did a number of reports on the medical fraction of radioactive waste. Medical waste is very short lasting. The radioactive waste, it's very low concentration. It's less than 1% of the radioactivity in the whole nuclear waste stream that was to go into these dumps. It was nuclear power that was over 95% of the radioactivity, but they like to try to dress it up and put the white coats in front to justify the dumps. And this has happened in other parts of the nuclear fights. So there were probably 40 or more locations that were targeted from 1980 until 2012, when one dump did open in Texas. Some communities, often the more wealthy communities, were able to kick the dump promoters out in a short amount of time, weeks, months, a year or two, 3, 4. Then there were the places in Ward Valley, California, sacred land to the 5 native nations along the Colorado River. There was the Hispanic American land in Texas at Sierra Blanca that was targeted. Both of those sites were over 10-year fights, 12 years, to try to actually finally win. And this year was the 25-year anniversary of the victory against both of those dumps. Those dumps were being banked on by the nuclear industry. They wanted those ditches more than anything. They were assuming they were going to get it. And we together, not just the people there, but the people there absolutely dedicated lives and fortunes to these fights, and won. Unfortunately, one dump did open, the most oppressive place in Andrews, Texas. And now that one is being targeted for a high-level nuclear, supposedly interim site. So that battle continues. And we have allies with even the oil industry and the ranchers who don't want to contaminate that land. So, and the state of Texas and the state of New Mexico are fighting the dumps that are targeted there, which the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has licensed. So we've got continuing fights. These fights have been fought and won. Back when I started in the 80s, these kind of dumps were called AFR, away from reactor dumps. And there were a few sites, Illinois, South Carolina, New York, that were targeted. Big fights, big wins, overcame it. Then the name changed to MRS, monitored retrievable storage. West Virginia was targeted, kicked them out. Tennessee was targeted, big fight, kicked them out. Then in the Obama years, when the Blue Ribbon Commission, when Yucca Mountain was canceled as a proposed option, renewed energy is being put into supposedly interim sites, and the Department of Energy is doing a program to fund other organizations and universities to help do PR in favor of this bad idea. Interim sites are a bad idea because they're not an answer, and they're going to mean 40 years of moving this most dangerous waste across the country. So you all know this. Most of you have been part of this fight, and thank you for all of that effort, and let's keep at it in the year to come. How am I doing on time, Tim?
I think we can move on to the next point, but you wanted to make an ask as well, right?
Well, I did want to, yes, I want people to donate to NEARS, and so please use the link in the box. It'd be great to also donate to Hall No. 2 separate donations, 2 separate organizations, but we need you, and we hope you can help. I had just 2 more things I wanted to go into. So the Low-Level Waste Policy Act that passed in 80 and the amendments in 85 made states take responsibility for nuclear power waste other than the irradiated fuel. And I would say that the decades in those fights was a big victory that we only have 1 dump that resulted. That's all they really wanted and needed, though. So that's what they got. but we're trying to prevent the existing dumps from getting worse. So in the year to come, we're going to have another change in the rules that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has that's going to allow longer lasting and more concentrated waste into these unlined soil ditches. And we're going to need your help on fighting the 10 CFR 61 rule change, I'm sure. So I hope that you'll be up for that. And then the other thing I wanted to say, which many of you also know, is that as we fought these dumps around the country, and there were 30 or 30 some states that were each looking at a number of sites. So the public education on nuclear power threats and waste was pretty high. At that point, when it looked like there weren't going to be new dumps, the 6 existing ones were already leaking and troublesome, the industry and the government once again tried to pretend that it wasn't radioactive. And at one point they proposed that a third of the nuclear power waste be considered regular garbage or recyclable into the marketplace. So 14 states passed laws saying you can't do this. Other states were considering it when we had our victory in Congress to overturn those really big, bad BRC, below regulatory concern policies. Dang, I should have brought one of our no BRC pins next time. So the public education and the activism that fought the dumps actually helped to drive the fight against deregulating the waste and spreading it around the country. And there have been nationally at least 15, I think we're at 16 times that the federal government and the industry have tried to deregulate nuclear waste. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next rule change that comes next year, whether they're going to try again. There have been dozens of names for below regulatory concern, exempt quantities, very low level waste. But this fight, as long as they've got the waste and they don't want to pay to isolate it, they're going to try to get rid of it, and they would like to sell it and make money getting rid of it. And we have to stay strong. The United States has not allowed this, and we need to keep strong on that. And the other thing that is important, I think, is radiation itself. That many of us are motivated by preventing unnecessary radioactivity in our lives, in our water, in our environment, because there is no safe level. And that's one of the things that the National Academy of Sciences has quite honestly been trying to change. They're trying to say that there's a little bit that's good for you, or that maybe it's not as bad as we thought. But in fact, every time the National Academy reviews all the radiation studies, as honestly as they do, or so, it has been shown that radiation is more dangerous than previously thought. Despite this fact, the regulations have gone the other way. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission regulations, and by fiat then state regs, have actually increased the allowable radioactivity that people can be exposed to. So we need to stay on the radiation issue, and the big advisor to the Congress on this and to the agencies is the National Academy of Sciences. And we work together with the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act coalition that's fighting for compensation for downwinders of nuclear weapons detonations and production of nuclear weapons, to prevent the last National Academy study that was done from coming to a conclusion that radiation isn't as bad as we thought. It turned out that there were clear conflicts of interest unrevealed until the very last public meeting, when we did reveal that the director, the chair of the study group, actually had worked for the Department of Energy for decades and never admitted it. So, and the Department of Energy, of course, makes the biggest messes and is potentially liable for them. So, and then there's another National Academy study that I want to point to, which is BEER, Biological Effects of Ionizing Radiation, 7, which came out, now it's more than 10, 15 years ago. It's the latest one. And the charts in that study showed that women are 1.5 times more likely to get cancer from the same amount of radiation as men, and that little girls are 7 times more likely to get cancer from the same amount of radiation. So the standards are all based on the standard man. Sometimes they're doing, the EPA is doing some averaging between men and women, but the standards are not protective enough. And we need to stay on top of what's legal, because at some point, there is a possibility of having liability for these exposures. And we need to stay on it. It is uphill. So I think that that's probably enough history, but the history, like I said, it is coming back. There will be more National Academy studies. There is legislation on nuclear waste. There is uranium legislation. There are bills that we're trying to get passed to compensate people who've been exposed and damaged by the US government radiation work. And so we hope to support all of you that are working on this in the field and coordinate our efforts together, continuing into the future. And with much gratitude for all that you do, please help us to continue by giving us another donation. And we hope that we can have some real big victories in the years to come. So, Anne, let's see. Anne's gonna, I don't know if you do the thermometer now or if we just go straight to Denise, who's gonna change the tone to see how much you guys know about nuclear waste with a little quiz.
A little one. Hey, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So you've been hearing of what we have to say from our very knowledgeable, brilliant team here. And now it's time for the NEARS quiz show. We are offering you a brief test on how much nuclear industry ridiculousness you were willing to pay attention to this year. You should see a poll quiz window on your screen, I hope, that will allow you to select an answer. So let's get started. I hope you can see the screen. Yeah? All right.
I don't.
You don't see it?
Nope. Yep.
Aha, there it is. Okay. Let me just, in my way. Hold on a second. Okay. So the first question for our quiz. Building new nuclear reactors is risky business. More than half of the reactors ever planned in the US have been canceled. But when nuclear projects fail, who foots the bill? Which one of the following nuclear construction projects actually got paid for failing? A, Sumner 2 and 3, canceled after $9 billion spent on construction. B, Vogtle 3 and 4, $3 billion paid by customers before $35 billion, 7 years late, reactors are complete. C, NuScale, $6 million in DOE money spent on canceled MRs. D, Oklo, still getting DOE and DoD contracts after microreactor license application was rejected. Or E, all of the above. Okay, make your selections.
We've got some smart cookies.
We got some smart cookies. All right. Should I give the answers now, or would you like them at the end? Now?
Yeah.
Okay. It looks
Well,
like
people are still voting.
People are still voting. Yeah, people are still voting.
Yeah, so you can go on to question number 2, I think, and then
all right, I will do that.
We're seeing them all at once.
Okay. All right, let me go on to question number 2. All right, number 2. Most companies dump pollution into our lakes, rivers, and oceans because they say it's too expensive not to. But nuclear power plants get the cost of decommissioning and cleaning up their waste paid paid for by tax paid for taxpayers and ratepayers. Which one of the following power plants dumped its radioactive waste into nearby river, lake, or ocean anyway? A, Fukushima Daiichi, dumping radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. B, Pilgrim, venting radioactive water into the air after Massachusetts passed a law prohibiting dumping. C, every nuclear power plant in the world dumping and venting radioactive waste during everyday routine operation. Or D, all of the above.
Do people have to click on polls at the bottom to get this to come up? Looks like some people aren't getting it.
No, I think everyone's getting it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 3. Okay. Question 3. When people get caught breaking the law, they aren't supposed to be able to keep the fruits of the crimes. Which of the following nuclear corporations have to give back all of the money that it made from corruption and fraud that they were caught for and admitted to? A, SCANA, after defrauding South Carolinians for billions on Sumner 2 and 3. B, Westinghouse, for working with SCANA to defraud South Carolinians. C, Exelon, for continuing to get paid the $2.4 billion nuclear bailout in Illinois and getting another $700 million bailout after admitting corruption. D, Energy Harbor, whose creditors are getting paid $4 billion to merge with Vistra after allowing the $60 million HB6 corruption scandal. Or E, none of the above. All right. Let me see here. All right. It looks like most of you got 95%, got all of the above for the number 1. And I'm sorry, my screen keeps going back and forth. At number 2, 88% got all of the above. Yeah. And number 3, 81% got none of the above, which is the correct answer. So there you have it.
We got a lot of sharp cookies in this audience.
We do. Thanks for playing.
Okay, chip in again.
Hold on a second. I'm sorry, Dee. What did you say?
Oh, I was just saying people could donate again.
Oh, yeah. Is there, can we check out our thermometer?
We're inching up there, guys. We love to see it. We love to see it. Feel free to write us a comment. I do check all of those, and I love seeing what everyone has to say. You can make a one-time or a monthly recurring donation. We always love our recurring donators. $1 is awesome. $100 even better. Keep in mind that new and recurring donors are matched, so even your $1 gets doubled to $2, and just goes up from there. So we appreciate everything.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. This is really terrific. So moving into what the the grassroots movement looks like going forward. We wanted to kind of give you a sense of kind of what we need to be doing, coming up in the next year and the next few years. And really, this is the time when we need to, to really step up organizing, at the grassroots and across the country. We are, as everyone has heard again and again, we are in the middle of a climate crisis, and the climate crisis is also a nuclear crisis. The climate crisis, is upsetting, is increasing the extremity of our weather events. It's raising sea levels, and that's only going to get more intense over time. And those also affect the safety of nuclear power plants, the safety of nuclear waste dumps, and going in the other way, the continued operation of nuclear power plants also blocks the development of renewable energy, which is our best solution to phasing out fossil fuels. And also the plans to build new nuclear power plants end up blocking renewable energy as well, because it takes so long and so much and so much money to plan to build nuclear power plants that you can't do both at the same time. And so right when we are needing to start phasing out fossil fuels in a really serious way in the next few years, these plans that the nuclear industry is promoting to get countries and get utility companies and get states to begin investing in building new nukes, none of which are going to be able to generate a single kilowatt hour of electricity by 2030. We need to be able to stop this. And in order to do that, we need to do a bunch of things. And this is, again, going back to the necessity of grassroots organizing and a grassroots movement. First, we need to be uniting, with the climate justice movement and environmental justice movements around the country to advance energy democracy. The utility companies have too much power to be calling the shots over our energy future in this moment when we know that we need to make change fast, and we can make change fast. So what NEARS is going to be doing, what we've been doing, is working with grassroots groups and climate justice coalitions at the state level and around the country to put the power over energy decisions back into the people's hands. This is how we can make the transition quickly, is by doing that kind of planning to actually phase out fossil fuels and nuclear power and make this transition quickly. We also need to fight this new wave of new reactor proposals. And the industry is investing a tremendous amount of misinformation and PR to confuse people about what the real solutions to the climate crisis are. And now they're doing this in a really insidious way, because in addition to trying to build reactors, new reactors in the existing nuclear plant sites, they're also targeting new communities. And in particular, they're targeting coal communities. The Department of Energy released a report last year with a map that essentially identifies coal communities as prime targets for construction of new reactors. And they've unleashed an initiative called the Coal to Nuclear Transitions, which is now trying to foist nuclear power plants onto communities that are already polluted with coal mine waste and coal ash ponds and other sources of pollution. And as a way to try to relieve the economic distress that's coming to those communities through the phase out of coal. And so what we are doing is starting to work with communities that are coal communities that are being targeted to build a network of coal communities that are being targeted for new reactors, and to begin integrating them and helping them connect with the broader anti-nuclear movement, to be able to share resources and strategies, and to be able to unite the movements against fossil fuels and the movements against nuclear at a much deeper level. And then we also need to be making sure that we keep climate action on track and not letting the nuclear industry derail the transition to renewables. And that again goes back to the work that we're doing in the energy democracy space to work climate and environmental justice coalitions to enact renewable energy transition plans and require utilities to phase out nuclear power and fossil fuels, in the next 10 years. And so this is really the essence of the work that needs to happen, and to sort of reignite and to unite the anti-nuclear movement with the broader movements for climate justice and environmental justice, because the future, because we all need the renewable energy future. whether our communities are being contaminated by fracking and coal mining, whether it's air pollution from burning fossil fuels, whether it's, or whether it's radioactive waste and radioactive waste dumps and the operation of nuclear power plants, we all need to be transitioning to renewable energy. And to take on the energy industry, the utility industry, the nuclear and fossil fuel industries, we need to be doing that together. And so what we're going to be doing is expanding the work that we've been doing in the climate movement for the last several years towards really sort of pushing for comprehensive transition plans in every state to transition away from nuclear power and fossil fuels to renewable energy quickly. And we know that that can happen. And so this is, really what we, why we also need your support tonight, and hope that you will, that you'll dig deep and make another contribution, is because, the coalition building and grassroots organizing is really hard work. And it actually does require a lot of resources, and it also gets the biggest bang for the buck. To do grassroots organizing creates change quickly. And that's really what we need to be doing, at every level in the movement. So, with that, I will also hand it over to Anne to talk about what that looks like in terms of igniting a new generation of activism.
Yeah, gosh, it's so exciting because it's such a exciting place to be in as an activist. There are so many tools and so many resources that didn't exist even, a decade ago. So we're living in such a different world. And yeah, the world of activism is changing. Our activists are changing. They have new fears and new realities that generations past could only hypothesize about. But they also have new tools, like I was saying, that generations past could only dream about. Instantaneous messaging, both privately and socially, recording tools that can broadcast an event in real time without the editing and middleman of a broadcast news station that's honestly owned by who knows who. Location-specific social posting that an activist in New York can watch coming out of Gaza. We've seen a lot of that lately, and it's devastating and heartbreaking, but we have the information now, and we have information we can make change. We also exist in a world of so-called fake news, in a world full of bias, lies, scandal, and corruption, in a world where the nuclear industry can convince STEM kids and tech bros alike that the future lies in a decades-old technology proven time and time again to be dangerous, unreliable, corrupt, expensive, and detrimental to the health of our waters, indigenous lands, and mountain ranges, sacrificed in the name of a permanent repository for a body of waste that will remain deadly for millennia. With this in mind, NEARS plans to continue our emphasis on engaging and meeting activists where they're at. And that's different now than it was, 1, 2, 3, 5 decades ago. The new generation of activists lives in a social realm that just a decade ago barely existed in the way this generation understands and utilizes it now. As we expand our activist base, we are expanding the platforms we meet our activists on. As we watch the fall of giants, such as Twitter, as it crashes and burns before our very eyes, we watch the rise of TikTok, which a few years ago was silly dances, but gone are the days of its silly dances. And here to seemingly stay are young journalists, activists, lawyers, students, and so many more, creating daily video content, delivering news that would have never gotten the green light on a traditional news station. In a quarter of an hour, in 15 minutes on TikTok, I've learned new science behind training cats, as well as the latest, often unreported, movement of anti-LGBTQ laws in the South, the mistreatment of Cop City protesters and activists in Atlanta, and sometimes, if I'm lucky, wins to take land back by local indigenous communities here in Northern California. It feels like those stories are a bit fewer and farther in between lately, but they are there. And my generation and generations younger than me even are excited, and they're sharing that and they're talking about it. In this new digital age, however, we also continue to succeed in tried and true outreach campaigns. As a humble brag on behalf of NEARS communication efforts and the persistence, resolve, and determination of our activists over the past several years, NEARS has seen exceptional growth in its email outreach capacity, as well as our activists taking action and sending tens of thousands, I mean that, guys, tens of thousands of targeted emails to state and federal government officials demanding energy equity, environmental justice, and accountability for big nuclear. But we aren't the only ones on social media trying to educate and empower the public. Big nuclear has deep pockets and even bigger mouths with high-paid PR campaigns, snappy-sounding Gen Z influencers, and catchy graphics displaying cherry-picked half-truths about nuclear power. So if you like an underdog story, you'll love anti-nuclear activism. But the underdog has community support. Coming into 2024, we are working on creating a communications and campaigning toolkit for our amazing activists like you guys, as well as other environmental organizations. These tools will equip you to speak on the various aspects of anti-nuclear activism, as well as pro-renewable activism, both in person and online. This is a very exciting project we're working on and putting our whole heart into to deliver to our grassroots supporters and other organizations looking to fight for our clean energy future. But here's the thing, activism is we, not me. And that's how we change the world. And like many environmental organizations and nonprofits, we rely on our supporters, like all of you here, our grassroots activists, to show up with passion for justice and a strong moral compass pointing us towards a clean, green, renewable energy future, a future that activists can actually be proud of. So with that, I am going to ask, of course, because it's a fundraising webinar, that you please consider making a one-time or a recurring donation of any amount to help us continue this amazing pivotal shift in activism and communications, and bringing the young folks in, bringing in the babies and the kids that are still green and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to make some noise like everybody before them has. So I will share once again our thermometer. Guys, I know how to work Zoom. I'm Gen Z. There we go. There it is. And we are coming up on the $2,000 mark, you guys.
Yeah, we're almost halfway there.
Oh, there we go. Actually, we just went over.
Excellent.
To $2,059.
Very exciting. So why don't we move into the Q&A, since we're here we are an hour in, and let's get into some dialogue.
Okay. Let's see. Well, the first question that came up, any insight on lobbying at the latest COP where nuclear power was elevated without evidence but with success as the solution to our carbon-mediated climate change?
Yeah, I think what we saw at this year's COP was a perverse display of corporate influence across the dirty energy industry. You know, what's been happening at the COP, which is the short for the Conference of Parties, which is UN speak for the Global Climate Summit that happens every year, you know, where the countries are supposed to come together and make plans for, you know, to actually address the climate crisis. As the urgency and the need for climate action and climate justice has been getting greater, the fossil fuel industry, the nuclear industry, have been essentially treating these things as some sort of a trade conference and sending hundreds and hundreds of lobbyists to basically get the ear of every government official and diplomat that they can to try to convince them to do nothing and to invest in dirty energy instead of in the real solutions that we know are necessary and right here at our fingertips. And so we knew that going into this COP, it was going to be a really pro-nuclear COP. The United Arab Emirates is the first country on the Arabian Peninsula to build nuclear power plants, and this was going to be essentially the opportunity for the oil and nuclear industries to unite around this, and that's exactly what happened. These are countries, they've been increasingly holding these climate conferences in countries where protest is almost impossible. On my own social media, the last couple of weeks, I've been posting photos from the demonstrations that happened at the climate conference that happened in Paris in 2015, where the Paris Agreement was established. They tried to suppress protest in Paris, but we were able to break through, and hold a mass demonstration that really underlined the need for there to be a global agreement. Ever since then, they've been holding these conferences in places like Poland and Egypt and now the United Arab Emirates, where demonstrations and protests have been almost impossible. And so that's really what we see happening. And it isn't just the nuclear industry that's been getting what it wants. They almost stopped. They almost stopped an agreement on fossil fuels this time too. But what also happened this time was that there wasn't, there's now a 120 nation coalition committing to triple renewable energy by 2030. So this is now the agreement that's coming out of this COP after protest by both the most affected countries and by the activists that were there. Actually got language right at the front, promoting and committing to a tripling of renewable energy and a doubling of energy efficiency by 2030. So the nuclear industry's campaign to triple nuclear by 2050 is completely irrelevant if we actually expand renewables and energy efficiency and real climate solutions at the levels that people are ready to commit to around the world. The danger is that these powerful countries that are promoting nuclear power, including the US and the UK and France and Russia and China, that they will be able to essentially distract countries from doing the things that they can do now by building renewables and doing energy efficiency, to phase out fossil fuels and to waste the next decade and 2 decades, and spend trillions of dollars to try to expand nuclear power, which is going to fail. It's not going to work. It's just not going to be possible to even do what they're asking to do. But the more that they try, and the more attention they get for doing it, the more distracted people are going to be from the real solutions, that we need. And that's, I think, the real lesson coming out of this COP, is that the world is ready to move to renewables. It's the nuclear nations and the fossil fuel countries, of which the US is both, are trying to hold back.
Yeah, and there was a comment about that. Someone had made a comment that said, apart from Germany keeping their nuclear power stop, the whole of Europe starts abusing COP28 outcome to plan for orders of huge amounts of so-called new small reactors to cover energy needs up to 2050.
Yeah, and I think that's right. This is actually the global nuclear industry that's pushing back, because just like the global fossil fuel industry, they know the writing's on the wall for them.
Okay. I'm just going to move on to, probably not segue, but another question just right after. I would love to hear some discussion of greenwashing, especially as it is impacting environmental activists. I have a hard time convincing some of the most dedicated environmental activists I know that nuclear is not needed for the transition. And in fact, any money spent on nuclear in any way is money that will not be used for the transition to renewable energy.
Yeah, it's absolutely right, Laura. This is really the thing that the industry is trying to do, is confuse people as much as possible about what the real solutions are, what's going to work. And the reality is the nuclear industry has nothing to offer. They're only going to keep running their old reactors if they're getting billions and billions of dollars in subsidies from the federal government and the state government, which could be used to develop way more renewable energy and energy efficiency than these old reactors generate. And at the same time, the plans to build new reactors are going to go nowhere. What we've seen time after time is that trying to build new reactors like the ones in Georgia comes, at massively increased expense, takes way longer than it should have, and could have been, and the same amount of energy could be gotten from renewables and energy efficiency much faster and much cheaper. And so these are the trade-offs that the industry is pushing, is to get people to buy a fantasy versus what we actually can do in the reality.
Well, we could segue in two different ways. I'm going to go with, is there a good explainer on renewable energy storage? Well, actually, yeah, I'm just going to ask this one. Is there a good explainer on renewable energy storage to counter the so-called baseload argument for nuclear power?
There's tons of stuff out there. The reality is that the whole notion of baseload energy, which you might hear the industry talk about a lot in terms of why we need nukes, this is an outdated concept that is no longer relevant to how our energy systems work anymore. And so there's lots of reports out there. We'll have them posted on our website. But the idea that we need, and in fact, yeah, thanks Ace, the No Miracles Needed is a good book for that. There's lots of others, but the reality is that the base load is actually getting in the way of the transition to renewable energy, and it's not the other way around.
Here's a couple questions on renewables. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. This is another question about renewables. How do you counter the argument that renewables require so much large land use while nuclear requires so much less if you don't count the waste areas?
Well, this is another one of the really confusing talking points that the energy industry is using, and this is coming from both from the fossil fuel industry and from the nuclear industry. The reality is that renewable energy doesn't take up very much land at all. Wind farms and solar farms tend to be spread out over larger areas, but for instance, there's a lot of wind development is done on farmland these days. And so, so you have, a windmill on a farm, but there's crops being grown and animals grazing all around them. And the same thing is true with solar. There's also ways to develop, solar, especially on, existing structures, whether it's rooftop solar on your house or, solar on a big department store building with a flat top roof, or, or putting solar over parking lots. There's ways to the idea that we need tremendous amounts of land for renewable energy actually isn't true, and they actually marry well with existing uses that require very little development of them. So but with a nuclear power plant, you have to have a large area to build the nuclear plant that nothing else can happen, both for security reasons and because it's and for safety reasons. But then you have all of the uranium mining and all of the radioactive waste dumps, all the water that gets used to power the nuclear power plants that's destroying our the wildlife in our lakes and rivers and oceans, and all of those things. And all of those things the industry sort of likes to wipe away, because when you take a picture, you can't see it.
So there are so many steps to the fuel chain. There are over 4,000 to 5,000 uranium mines that are poisoning the land in mostly the West.
Uranium mines.
Right, abandoned. And then there are all of the other steps in what we call the fuel chain. The industry likes to say a cycle, but there's no cycle. It's many, many steps, and it's transportation to all of these sites, from mining and milling, mostly in Moab, south of Moab, White Mesa. It's the only mill right now in the country. In situ leachate mining is directly injecting chemicals into the groundwater to try to get the uranium out and then extract it out. And so there's very much land use and destruction before you even get to the nuclear reactor. And we still haven't chosen a sacrifice area or sacrifice areas for the high level waste. And we've got 8 sites that have been sacrificed for so-called commercial low level waste. And so there's a lot more impact along the whole chain.
All right. Oops, sorry, I just lost my, there we go. All right. Are you encouraged by the 2023 World Nuclear Industry Report?
Tim wrote part of it.
Yeah, I'd say that we're what's encouraging about that report is that it makes it clear that nuclear has no solutions to offer for the climate crisis, and that this industry is wasting massive amounts of money and people's attention and time, having to argue about it. So would encourage people to check it out. We did work on the U.S. section for the report this year. Which lays out the broad array of schemes that the U.S. industry is using to try to prop itself up, but also gives a really sort of clear picture of both the failures of new reactor projects, the ways in which the U.S. even in the U.S. the industry is has already been declining, and the extreme steps that the industry is using to try to prop itself up, including all of these cases of corruption and fraud that have been in the headlines the last few years. And what I'd add to that is that the other piece that's in the report is that the massive amount of lobbying and corrupt political spending that the industry is doing to fuel all of this. And so just in the last 2 years, 2021 and 2022, the nuclear industry spent over $190 million, reported spending over $190 million, lobbying our federal government. That's to count nothing of what they're spending at the state and local levels, where there really is their bread and butter, and and an untold amount of dark money, going to shady sort of organizations that aren't required to report where their money's coming from, to basically be political lobbying groups. This is really what we're up against, is the expansion of corporate influence into our government. And that's, again, going back to the whole need for energy democracy, why we have to start taking the power out of the utility companies' hands and putting it back in the people's hands where it belongs.
Yeah, there's a question that kind of segues into how our electeds are lobbied heavily by industry and pro-nuclear activist promoters, both state and federal delegations. Lobbyists and promoters get time in hearings, while we, the public, are given our few minutes of testimony and dismissed as a small number of opposers. And the legislation is being written with industry lobbyists guiding their hands. How do we effectively push back? Utilities are slow walking renewables and hiding behind outdated resource adequacy baseload arguments, and even climate champion Democrats are buying into the framework. How do we get more access to intervene earlier and contest the promotion and the compelling lure of the federal and state money for clean energy? Yeah,
question.
It is a great question, and again, I think it goes back to the topic of our event tonight, is grassroots. There's a lot of power in people, talking to and meeting with their congressional representatives, and I think part of the reality is that the nuclear industry itself actually has is only in a few dozen congressional districts. So communities that are people that are living in reactor communities are a fairly small minority of the congressional districts in the country. But I think that again, with with expanding the scope of grassroots organizing, and especially uniting the anti-nuclear and anti-fossil fuels and climate justice movements, we can actually be expanding that base to reach more of our representatives and to start breaking down this sort of pervasive the bubble of and the echo chamber that the industry, that the lobbies have built around Congress. And so it's really going to be through expanding grassroots organizing that way that we move our Congress and our representatives in the right direction too.
And I kind of want to just add to that. I was curious what our current numbers were as far as how many emails and letters and actions taken we have had. And since February of 2020, we have sent 5.4 million messages to our elected representatives. You guys have through our actions. So it feels so often like we are the small dissenting minority, but we are loud and we add up, and every action adds up. And you guys are incredible. I mean, 5.4 million messages, guys. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing.
It's sad. It's very frustrating that within Congress, we have very few, but we do have some champions. And we need to work, especially with more friendly representatives and senators, to try to educate them more. It's been tough to go against the industry influence. And a lot of that is, I think one of the other comments in there was talking about the connection between nuclear weapons and nuclear power. And really, nuclear power doesn't make any sense, but there is an awful lot of pressure from the weapons complex to keep it alive as a front. As medical was a front for nuclear waste dumps, nuclear power is a front for nuclear weapons. And unfortunately, both of those fights need to be taken on. And yeah, it is uphill. We're not kidding. We're not pretending it's not, but we have still had some victories. So I think we certainly can't back down. And someone else mentioned that there's so much going on in the world that's just overwhelming and makes me want to curl up in a ball and be in complete denial. Personally, I have selective denial and feel like I'm going to just keep fighting on this nuclear front because we have had so many victories in the past, and it's time to achieve some more.
Yeah, that's right, Dee. And I also think that there's, the industry is really putting, these itself out on a limb with all of these crazy claims about the need for new nuclear, the potential for small modular reactors, and all of these things. What we saw happen just last month was the flagship project for these small modular reactors, which had been promoted for over a decade, that the Department of Energy had committed to giving over $1 billion to support, which wasn't actually anywhere near even starting construction. But its costs kept on going up and up and up, even before a shovel broke ground. And that project was canceled last month by a company called NuScale. And the industry is really staggering now, because now they're in a position of, the one thing that they were hoping to, that was going to show that nuclear has a future was, just ended. And because, the project was too expensive, it had already taken 10 years and was going to take probably another decade to actually build it. And nobody wanted to buy the power because it was going to be way too expensive. And so this is, again, case in point of, the industry is getting all these politicians to sing its praises and to cough up all this money from the taxpayers' coffers to pay for it. And And if those politicians start ending up with egg on their faces because these projects keep on getting canceled, then I think then they're going to run out their chain on this facade as well. And we need to just keep on organizing and keep on being there, pointing this out and organizing more people to do the same.
So there's a question here, Denise, that I saw before, but now I don't see anymore, but it had to do with nuclear waste.
Yeah, I was just about to
And-
get, I was just about to get
okay,
to it.
go ahead
So,
then.
Yep. So where is NEARS on disposing the existing waste from power and weapon?
So there is no way to isolate radioactive waste for as long as it's hazardous. There's just simply not a technology for the long-lasting waste. Some of the radioactive elements that are formed when the uranium splits are short lasting, a few days or minutes. But then, of course, there are other ones that are dangerous literally into the millions of years. Iodine-129 has a half-life of 16 or 17 million years. You multiply that by 10 or 20, so you've got 340 million years hazard. We just don't have a guaranteed way to isolate plutonium, 1/4 to 500,000. So it has been our position that we need to isolate it as best we can. We need to stop making more of it. We need to store it in a way that it can be recontainerized. But then we do have the reality that irradiated fuel is not going to stay in the form of irradiated fuel for as long as it's hazardous, and it's eventually going to disintegrate and fall to the bottom the day of the drop. And at that point, it's going to be hard to move. And we've got this stuff at every reactor in the country. It means that we do need to find a way to manage it. The containers that it's now in are not going to last as long as the waste. Some are already in a dangerous condition. So there are some that advocate long-term stewardship and recontainerization. There are others that say we need to do the best that we can to dispose. Dispose is not a guarantee. It's a place to put it away. And I think that we're probably going to need to do that. But what it means then is that some areas are going to be sacrificed to become these supposedly permanent repositories. And if that happens, those are additional places in addition to where it is now. And what process will there be to choose those places? And is that something that we want to do? I think that is a pretty high, difficult challenge. And since I've been at NEARS and even before, and I think most of us know that stopping making more would be more, stop making it and then we'll talk about where to put the waste. That's been what a lot of us have said for a long time, but there doesn't seem to be a connection. Congress, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, licensing reactors, licensing fuel chain facilities, a way to stop the production. But if we really do need to link providing a sacrifice to stopping making more. And until that happens, it's pretty hard to, what it means then is that we are agreeing to contaminated sites over and over again and continuing it. One of my mentors said, when the bathtub is overflowing, the first thing you do is you turn off the tap. So it's tough though. I mean, communities that have this high level waste sitting there and low level waste, and there's no way to guarantee its isolation, are in a really impossible situation, and they never volunteered for it either. So it's not a good answer, but we really do need to stop making more of it. We need to take better care of what we've got. We've got to not deregulate it. Don't make high level into low level. Don't reprocess it and make it worse. Don't pretend it's not radioactive and recycle it into baby toys and regular garbage dumps and leak into our water supply. Tim, were you going to say something?
Well, yeah, just that, the reality is that there is no good solution to nuclear waste. It's all about, what's the least bad solutions to dealing with it. And the reality is that, what has guided radioactive waste practices in the US, and the rest of the world for decades now has been what's expedient for the nuclear industry. What's cost them less, what can they get away with. And there has not been, we have not had a radioactive waste policy in this country that is focused on protecting the people who live near it, and who are affected by it. And so that's part of the sea change that needs to happen, is that we need to actually hit the reset button on radioactive waste policy, and enforce the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the nuclear industry to actually deal with the hazards they've created. And then they are nowhere near wanting to do that at this point, and Congress, frankly, isn't asking them to do it.
And it's impossible to expect that the NRC is going to. I mean, the only way we can force agencies to do anything is to force the elected officials. One of the things that happened through all the so-called low-level radioactive waste fights, the dumps in the 80s and 90s, is that a lot of people ended up running for office and then getting into positions of power themselves. And that's a very expensive and time-consuming process, but it's one of the ways to take it on.
So grassroots campaigns for Congress too.
Okay, so it is getting on to the end of we're scheduled at 9:30 Eastern.
Yeah, we've already
So
run over our time a little
build
bit.
over. We want to do a final tally and thank everyone for joining us, and thank everyone for donating now and in the future and in the past.
Let me do another.
And remember the Hall No folks too.
Do another thermometer share here.
Well, we've gotten almost halfway there, which is which is great for one evening and just an hour and a half. So thank you, everybody. This is awesome. And if you've got it in you to try one more time before we wrap up, that'd be great. We're also many of you might have also be receiving our fundraising letter for the end of the year, which touches on a lot of the same themes from tonight. You can also mail us a check at our office. The address is on our website, which is www.nirs.org. We can also put that in the chat. But we really just appreciate y'all's energy and spirit here tonight, and staying with us for an hour and a half. This is such an important conversation, and we're really looking forward to next year and to launching this new phase of our work. Thanks, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
And also support the Hall No campaign.
Will the chat be saved?
Mhm.